welcome to episode 156 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Lydia Creech,
Andrew Swafford,
and Jessica Carr.
And in today's episode, we will be doing movies we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we will be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1971's A New Leaf. But let's go ahead and get into movies that we saw this week. The first one is a relatively new release. It is the latest from David Lowery. He wrote and directed that. He most recently did Pete's Dragon for Disney, and that is a ghost story. It stars Casey Affleck under a sheet and Rooney Mara. I mean, it does. I don't know. There's no.
Does it say that on the poster, like Rooney Mara, Casey Affleck under a sheet?
It should. I mean, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, he's literally in the movie as himself for maybe 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, and then he's under a sheet. So.
And then he
worked for Michael Fassbender and Frank, you know.
That's true. But the movie, I don't know, it's kind of difficult to explain. It starts out with the story about the Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara characters. They're this married couple. They only, we get letters for their names. Casey Affleck is C and Rooney Mara is M. And they are living in this house. And then tragically, Casey Affleck's character dies in a car accident, which I asked this when I was doing the newsreel. And I'll ask this again. Did he have the car accident right outside of that house? Because there's no way you could have a car accident where you die outside that house. Or was that moved to that location because it was a memory? Because there's no way you could die in a car accident in that dirt road in the middle of nowhere. What do you think, Jessica?
I wondered the same thing because it was weird because you see the house and then you see the steam that's rising up in the air, and then when the camera moves it shows him in the car with the glass shattered and his dead body there. No.
So you don't see a collision at all.
But it's right outside of this house, and his house is like a ranch-style house in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road. I was like, there's no way a car crash could kill you if you would maybe bump somebody. But anyway, regardless, whatever. He dies in a car crash, and it cuts to Rooney Mara's character at the hospital, and she identifies him, and they put the sheet back over his head, and then they walk away, and then the camera kind of stays there for about 3 minutes, and then the sheet stands up and starts walking around and following people around the hospital, and then returns home. And for the remainder of the movie, Casey Affleck is under a sheet and is for the first while kind of following Rooney Mara's character around as she grieves and deals with the aftermath of his death, and then moves on from the house, and then it starts to explore other people who have lived in the house, and it goes kind of forward in time and backwards and all which ways. Again, it's kind of a difficult movie to explain and really sell just on the log line. But Jessica, I'm curious. I know that you were going to possibly be working on a review for the site, but I know you were really high on this movie.
Yeah, it was really great. It was hard for me to convince people to go see this with me because I had a hard time trying to tell them what it was about. And when you first talk about it, you're like, yeah, it's about a ghost that's following around his wife. And so people think, oh, this is definitely going to be a horror movie. But it's not at all a horror movie. To me, it was just a really meditative film. It was really slow. There wasn't a whole bunch that was happening, and it really just makes you kind of re-examine your relationship with death and your relationship with time. And I think one of the most famous scenes from this that everybody was talking about when it premiered at film festivals was the 5-minute long take of Rooney Mara eating the pie.
Her first pie ever. I thought that was an interesting note. She'd never eaten pie before, which I think is weird, but regardless, continue.
Do we believe that story? I don't know if I believe that story.
I 100% believe that story. I mean, she's a vegan, so pie wouldn't be your first thing that you want to eat when you're vegan. But they got her a vegan chocolate pie to eat, specifically for this scene. But the scene starts out, and the camera doesn't move, and it's 5 minutes long. And it's the camera's just sitting there. She's on the kitchen floor, and someone brings her a pie as I'm sorry that your husband died. Here's a pie. And she is so grieved that she just takes the pie, sits on the ground, and just starts eating it. and you are sitting there with her for 5 minutes as she is eating this pie. And at first it's like, okay, she's eating a pie, but then she starts getting angry and she gets angrier, and then her tears mix in with her snot and it drifts into the pie. And it is like and it's natural for people's mind to wander during the scene. Like, I was like, okay, like, I'm into this, like, she's eating this pie, I understand what you're saying, but I didn't stay with it the entire time. Like, I found myself wandering and thinking about other things. I looked at the people that I was with. I was like, are they into this? What's going on? And because I mean, and his ghost is, I mean, he's in the background of this whole thing, like, watching her while she eats this pie. So that was also just a little bit creepy to me. But I think overall that it was really powerful. I think some people are going to be like, yeah, whatever, that was boring. But to me, it made sense in the grand scheme of what the movie's trying to do.
Yeah. I'd like to preface that I saw this movie at 5:00 on a Monday, and I was the only person in the theater.
Ooh.
And it kind of added to the, like, the experience of watching this. Yeah, this is one I definitely agree with you that like, if you told somebody about it and they were like, that sounds weird, I have no interest in watching that, I'd be like, all right, I get that, like, you should try, but like, if somebody's not into this, it's not one that I'm gonna really try to really convince them on. It is a movie that requires you to sacrifice a lot to just kind of accept what it's trying to do. It's a very slow movie. It's a very quiet movie. It's a very contemplative movie. At one point, it enters this, like, Richard Linklater stage where there's a long string of dialogue that feels like it's something cut from a Before movie or Dazed and Confused, or, you know, something like that, where it's just a long bout of existential dialogue. But for the most part, it's just this you know, character who's under a sheet, who's, you know, wandering around and engaging with different lives. And I think that when I was thinking about the movie, there's a lot of stuff that just within the movie that I found really powerful. And I think that a lot of the shots, and especially the music by Daniel Hart, who had a great score in Pete's Dragon, does a great job in A Ghost Story as well. But I think the real powerful tool of A Ghost Story is a lot of what it leaves you with afterwards. I think it gives you a lot to just stew on, and I think that even if you don't like this movie, it should leave you walking out of the theater and driving home and sitting at home kind of thinking about the ideas that it's presenting. Even if you don't feel like the ideas really come full circle within the story or within the movie, I think that a lot of the concepts that Lowery presents are stuff that you can kind of take from this movie and implant onto your own life and kind of sit there, and it makes you think. And I feel like that's a powerful that's a powerful thing to let a movie, to have a movie do to you. And so it was one of those things where a couple days after the movie, I was still thinking about the concepts of the movie, and so it kind of gained my appreciation for it. I definitely want to rewatch it, because there's even though it's you know that you have 5-minute long sequences of Rooney Mara eating pie, there's still stuff you want to watch. That sequence cracked me up because it kind of felt like one of those things where, and I'm only taking this since I watched Uncle Kent 2 recently, and there's a scene where they do this, but it's like one of those things where there's a picture and you stare at the dot in the middle, and you stare at the dot for a long time, and then when they take they take the dot in the picture away and you stare at a blank piece of paper, you can still see the image. And I kind of felt that way because when you're watching that sequence, you're sitting there staring at Rooney Mara, and you completely forget after about 2 minutes that Casey Affleck is in that room. And so it literally, I was like watching her, and then I looked, I was like, oh shit, that guy is still there. Cause I looked and there's him in the sheet, like behind her, and that was almost a little jarring, even though it's not a horror movie. That did kind of jar me because I completely forgot that he was present in this whole sequence. But I think that if you come with an open mind, you can get a lot out of this movie. And I think that, again, it poses a lot of concepts that are kind of interesting to internalize and leave you with. But yeah, I don't know. Jessica, do you have anything else to add?
There are a couple of parts where I feel like could fit in a horror movie. Like, the part that freaked me out the most was whenever she goes to look at his dead body, and the sheet is on him, and she walks away, and he's there for what feels like the longest time, and you're like, is he gonna move? Is something gonna happen? And then he sits up, and you're like, oh my gosh. It really freaked me out. And that really stuck with me. I think another part is, just him just standing everywhere. Because after the movie was over, I just kept picturing, like, when I'm alone in a space, like, what if somebody was there and I could not see them? And it freaked me out. But like you said, with just thinking about it when the movie's over, I think one of the scenes that was the saddest to me, and it was kind of like a punch in the gut, like it was surprising, was whenever he's looking out the window and he sees another ghost that's in a house next door, and they're, at first it's kind of weird because they have subtitles because, like, they're not going to talk, and they're looking at each other and they wave, and one says hi and the other says hi, and then one says, I'm waiting for someone, and the other one says who, and they're like, I don't remember, and then they just, like, hang their head down, and it is the saddest thing. Like, my tears started falling from my eyes. I was like, oh my gosh. Because it just really, like, it makes you think about kind of like what the guy at the party was talking about, the kind of legacy that you leave behind. And, like, if you were, and this is going to sound so melancholy, so just stick with me, but, like, if you were to die tomorrow, there are going to be people that miss you. Like, that's not the point, but it's like, hundreds of years from now, who is going to remember that you even existed? And I feel like that kind of sadness of just knowing that you're just like this speck is what the movie is kind of about too.
A Ghost Story is still in theaters if you would like to watch it. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about it before we get off the topic? I know one thing that's been very controversial, even with people who haven't seen the movie but have just seen the trailer, is the aspect ratio and the rounded edges on the frame. Do either of you guys have thoughts about that?
No, I don't know. It didn't really bother me. It's pretty much set up in like Academy ratio.
Yeah.
Just I don't know. People have said that it looks like an Instagram filter or something like that. It turned a lot of people off from the film. Gave off kind of a twee vibe.
No, I kind of felt like it was a snapshot. So, like, a photo, like when you have a Polaroid picture, and this is like snapshots of life. So that's how I interpreted it, and I thought that it worked with it. It made it different, and it made the experience different. I didn't have a problem with it.
I don't know. I'm not really focusing on the on the outlines of the
okay, fair enough.
ratio.
I mean, it's the only movie I've noticed that has that particular style, at least that has been made in the last 100 years, I guess.
Well, A Ghost Story is in theaters now, but Lydia, you have a movie you'd like to talk about?
Yes. So this Saturday, I have a ticket to go see David Lynch's Eraserhead at the Lincoln Center. I've never seen it before, and I've avoided it.
You've never seen it before?
Hold on. Let me
Oh my gosh.
Look, I don't like Lynch. He makes me feel physically ill, and this is going to be on a big screen with an audience, and I'm like, okay, this is probably the only environment in which I'm going to watch Eraserhead, because I'm not going to put it on my TV and watch it by myself. Like, I already know it's a bad time. But to prepare for that, I decided last weekend to do quote-unquote accessible Lynch, and I did all of season 1 and season 2 and Fire Walk with Me in like 3 days of Twin Peaks. I don't know, did I say that?
You did not say Twin Peaks. That's fine.
Twin Peaks.
I like how you're preparing for a 90-minute movie by watching literally like 40 to 50 hours of Lynch.
Look, David Lynch is a filmmaker that I just can't I can't get behind. I don't like Mulholland Drive. I didn't like Lost Highway. I feel like I'm forgetting another one, or probably repressed it and blocked it out of my memory.
Have you seen Blue Velvet?
No. Maybe those.
Okay, those might be the only
Those
two.
might
then.
be the only two. But anyway, because this is a movie podcast, I will stick with Fire Walk with Me.
Thank you.
Just kidding. It came out in 1992. Lynch directed it after the end of season 2 of Twin Peaks, which ends on like a giant cliffhanger. And I'm sure that was really disappointing for all the Twin Peaks fans. But now you can find out what happens. Season 3 is on Showtime. Sort of. I don't know. I'm gonna get there. But Fire Walk with Me is a prequel for Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is about who killed Laura Palmer. It's where it begins. And Fire Walk with Me is about Laura Palmer, like the days leading up to her murder. And I don't know. I was telling Dylan that when I watch David Lynch films, it's like aggressively uncanny. It's not necessarily like he shoots horror, or maybe it's not horror, but I perceive it as horror in a way. Like, it's not necessarily gory or outright supernatural scary things happening. It's just like when he goes down a corridor and the lights flicker, or he holds too long on a creepy painting, like way too long, there's something wrong with it.
I think it's fair to call it horror. I mean, it's not working in the same mode or using the same techniques as mainstream horror directors, but I think the intention is to scare or disturb always.
And that's like the mode that I feel like he works in all ways, and maybe that's not fair to Lynch. A lot of people have described Fire Walk with Me as one of Lynch's more humanist films because it's a horror film. I'm trying to like dance around spoilers. I don't know if anybody wants to get into Twin Peaks now because season 3's on, like I did.
I feel like it's safe. I think you can spoil who killed Laura Palmer, etc. It's been a while. I
actually hopped into Fire Walk with Me about 16 episodes into Twin Peaks the show because Twin Peaks the show just turned into bad TV and I did not care. David Lynch stepped away as a showrunner and I was like, I'm done with this.
It's also like a natural place to watch Fire Walk with Me because it's after they reveal the killer and all the rest of the stuff doesn't pertain to Fire Walk with Me at all.
Yeah, not at all. So, and it's very horrifying, but it's also very sad. Like, Laura Palmer had a sad life, and I don't necessarily know I don't know, it exists in a weird place in the show, I think, and what Lynch was trying to do. Just because I watched in the middle and the show takes a hard turn towards like the goofy and soap opera-y.
What do you mean?
But then Fire Walk with Me is like this hard reminder into the show started out like Laura Palmer's into drugs and underage prostitution, and her father was molesting her, and it's like, oh no, this show started in a real dark place, and it's a like violent reminder because you also see her murder. Like, it's not because the show opens with her dead body and it's like, oh, we have a murder. But like Fire Walk with Me, like the murder's carried out, and it ends in the Red Room. That'll mean things to people who watch Twin Peaks. Laura Palmer and like this angel figure and blue lights, like really harsh blue lighting against the red in the background on her face. I don't know. It's a disturbing image. Like, I don't know if it's supposed to be comforting because Angel and
Lynch tends to have a pretty solid black and white sense. I mean, maybe this is wrong to say, but he tends to have a solid black and white sense of good and evil in terms of him putting avatars of pure good and avatars of pure evil in his film, even though often those things are all tangled up in one another, and it seems like they have this interdependent relationship where one cannot exist without the other. So But still, when you look at a vision of goodness in a David Lynch film, it always feels to me like it is pure goodness in a way. So that angel does not give you that vibe. It's actually been such a long time since I've watched Firewalk with Me that I don't even remember that image.
No, that angel does not give me that vibe at all. And I guess the most I can slot it into is, I don't know exactly what Lynch is saying, but all 3 films now that I've seen of his are like violence inflicted on women, like horrific violence. And like, I guess society's messed up and everything is awful. the end. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to see Eraserhead. We're going to top that off. Firewalk with Me.
Well, at least that one's about dudes.
It's about fatherhood? ?
Yes, it is about fatherhood. Unplanned, unexpected fatherhood.
Firewalk with Me has a bad dad in it.
Oh, yeah.
Dads.
You would not recommend people watch Firewalk with Me if they have not seen Twin Peaks, just for the record.
Yeah, no. I would probably, the order that I did it, if you're going to get into Twin Peaks, watch season 1, half of season 2. You could skip the rest. Who gives a shit? Firewalk with Me.
Well, you haven't seen season 3 yet, which, makes some season 2 stuff important. But I agree with you that
I guess I can.
It's a missed opportunity in a lot of ways.
I'm trying to enjoy sitting in that uncomfortable feeling because it's like, is that what people like about David Lynch? I'm seriously asking, like, what is the appeal? Because it mostly just makes me feel sick, like actually sick.
I don't know if I've ever felt that level of discomfort watching his movies.
Someone write in.
Yeah. For me, the appeal is definitely like his take on horror and the way that he works with the genre in unconventional ways. But I never in any movie, for the most part, enjoy feeling sick or enjoy feeling unpleasant, and I if people who follow me on Letterboxd know that like some of the lowest ratings I've given in a long time are like to Possession and The Woman Under the Influence, which are 2 very canonical, highly regarded movies that just made me feel bad in every sense of the word. And like that's not really what I go to movies to watch. Maybe that doesn't make me a good like connoisseur of art or whatever. But I don't feel that sense of like badness while watching Lynch. I actually think he has a great sense of humor in a lot of places. And I just enjoy the oddity of his films kind of on an absurd like entertainment level. And I love like the lore and the mythology and how well he crafts his more puzzle-like films, such as Mulholland Drive, that are like a game that invite you to play them and solve their riddles. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever felt the feeling you're describing watching them.
I'm not saying he's bad at what he does, and that's not the effect that he intends. It's just that I can't get over it.
Yeah. Jesse felt the same way watching Eraserhead, by the way.
Thank you.
And the public cinema showed the Art Life, the documentary by David Lynch earlier this year, and that is mostly just showing David Lynch's horrific, gothic, like gooey, inky black paintings, and because he's a painter first and foremost, and he kind of makes films on the side, more or less, surprisingly. And he talks about these like disturbing, dark worlds of his paintings as if they're just like these nice, pleasant things that he just enjoys looking at. And I've also seen interviews with David Lynch where he talks about the world of Eraserhead and just like how much he adored being in that world. And it was like he was bringing his dream world to life. So I don't know if his experience with his movies / art are the same experience that most of his audience has, but it almost feels like he exists in the world of his films where like all these things are just normal. I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
horrifying, and I don't think I like this look in David Lynch's soul. It's just not for me.
Yeah, he's weird. He's a weird dude.
Trying, but it's not for me.
Well, where can people watch Twin Peaks and Firewalk with Me should they want to take a look into David Lynch's soul?
Twin Peaks is on Netflix, season 1 and 2. Season 3 is on Showtime. Fire Walk with Me is on Showtime, or you can rent it on iTunes or Amazon or whatever
All right.
for money.
Well, we're going to take a short break. We will be back in part 2 talking about A New Leaf. Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is Zach Dennis with an important message because I have not talked to you enough during this episode. Cinematary would like you to know that we do not want your money. We're not clamoring for your dollars. At this time, we just want to enjoy each other's company and talk about the movies and feel our, distribute our thoughts to the world and become podcasting moguls. Simple stuff. No money involved. However, there are a few things that you could do to help out the show. We would really appreciate it. The first thing is review us on iTunes. I know literally every podcast asks you this. They're like, please review us on iTunes. But it's like important because, I don't know, iTunes, this is just what they do. This is how the Apple lords constrict us and keep us in their system. That's just what happens. So we need a nice little review. Just take like 2 minutes one day, be like, this is podcast review time. Put us on the list. Secondly, you can tweet us. We're at Cinematary on Twitter, or better yet, send us an email. We're cinematary@yahoo.com so we can hear from you. If you're just like Zach, you have terrible taste. Why do you keep talking about these superhero movies? You keep talking about these Japanese movies where all they do is drink sake and smoke cigarettes and talk about how life's awful. And I'll be like, yeah, but you're wrong. And you'll be like, yeah, but I'm just emailing you. And it'll be a whole thing. It'll be a nice discourse. Think about it. And finally, please tell your friends and family, they should know as well. I'm sure they like movies. I'm sure they like podcasts. We don't know. To recap, review on iTunes Review Day. Do that. Secondly, send your thoughts, Twitter, email, one of those. Do it. Third, share with your friends and family. We would love it. Do it. Please. Thank you. Now, let's get back. Back with part 2 of episode 156 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1971's A New Leaf, which is written, directed by, and stars Elaine May. The film also stars Walter Matthau and Jack Weston. It's based on a short story by Jack Ritchie titled The Green Heart. And the film follows a spoiled and self-absorbed man who has squandered his inheritance and is desperate to find a way to maintain his lavish lifestyle. The man, Henry Graham, sees an opportunity when he meets Henrietta Lowell, played by May, an awkward and bookish heiress. Though Henry courts Henrietta, he has no intention of remaining with her, and he develops a surprisingly sinister scheme. As Henry attempts to execute his plan, he finds that seeing it through may not be as easy as he had thought. For this film, Elaine May consulted Dr. Dominic Basil, a botany professor at Columbia University. Dr. Basil wrote botanically accurate lines into the script and supplied the botanical equipment seen in the film. May even modeled Henrietta's office after his. After May would not show Paramount Pictures a rough cut of the film 10 months into editing, Robert Evans took the film away from her and recut it. May's version was rumored to run an unwieldy 180 minutes. Supposedly, at one point, May hid the negative under her bed in order to gain negotiating leverage. It is not known if the original cut still exists. Evans shortened it to 102 minutes. Angered by the alterations, May tried to take her name off the film and unsuccessfully sued Paramount to keep it from being released. The original story included a subplot in which Henry discovers from the household accounts that Henrietta is being blackmailed on dubious grounds by the lawyer McPherson and another character played by William Hickey. Henry poisons both of them. This darkly casts Henry's eventual acceptance of a conventional life with Henrietta as his, quote, sentence. By eliminating the subplot, Paramount fixed the excessive runtime, avoided the awkwardness of Henry getting away with murder, and transformed the ending into a rather sweet affirmation of love and personal redemption. Though on this issue, Roger Ebert discussed it in his review, saying Miss May is reportedly dissatisfied with the present version. Newspaper reports indicate that her original cut was an hour longer and included 2 murders. Mathau, who likes this version better than the original, has suggested that writer-director stars should be willing to let someone else have a hand in the editing. Maybe so. I'm generally prejudiced in favor of the director in these disputes. Whatever the merits of Miss May's case, however, the movie in its present form is hilarious and cockeyed and warm. In what would become a hallmark of Elaine May, the film's original $1.8 million budget shot up to $4 million by the time it was completed. Shooting went 40 days over schedule and editing took over 10 months. Similar problems dogged her subsequent projects Mickey and Nicky and Ishtar.
So for the record, the version that we watched was or was not Elaine May's preferred cut?
It was not her preferred cut.
Okay.
During shooting, producer Howard W. Koch tried to have May replaced, but she had put a $200,000 penalty clause in her contract, and he was persuaded to keep her. On the film, Pauline Kael said there is a sweetness about its absence of style and about its shapeless, limp comic scenes. The New York Times said, not since the 2 reelers of the 1930s in which Edgar Kennedy, the genius of the slow burn, made his accommodation with the idiocies of Florence Lake, his bird-brained wife, have there been displays of anger, frustration, and greed as marvelous as those of Mathau in A New Leaf. Then, too, A New Leaf shares with the great screwball comedies of the Depression an almost childlike appreciation of money. It may not buy happiness, but having a lot of it helps. Ebert also put in his review that A New Leaf is in fact one of the funniest movies of our unfunny age. So, I guess the first thing to kind of talk about is the big point in that this was not Elaine May's intended cut of this movie. She wanted it to be 180 minutes long. I think it's difficult to really discuss. What could have been, they mentioned that having this subplot of an extra murder, but, we never saw that. So
it's difficult to imagine a 180-minute cut of this movie.
Exactly. And so, I guess what were your impressions of, of May, in what she was able to accomplish in the 120 minutes she was allotted. And, I don't know, does that say... I thought it was interesting, Andrew, on Letterboxd, you put that Elaine May should have had a career like Woody Allen, and we should have gotten 30 more movies like this. But I think that answers that question why we did not. But what were your impressions of Elaine May as a director, as a star, and kind of the film as a whole?
I think 120 minutes is perfect. The film as a whole was pretty breezy, and
breezy was the word I was going to use too.
And I mean, comedies shouldn't run much longer than that. Like, I'm sorry if her artistic vision was 3 hours and like a murder mystery, but the conceit is cute and it had enough time to be funny and be developed, and then it was done. So I think this cut is good. Maybe that shows a lack of imagination. Huh? Right.
Like, as much as I would love to see Elaine May's version of like Tony Erdmann or something like that, I do really like the pace of this movie right now as it stands. It just felt like every scene went on for the perfect right amount of time, and it felt very different in terms of pace versus most of the other old comedies I've seen, and definitely mainstream comedies. Whereas it doesn't feel like the jokes are necessarily punctuated, like with music or a specific editing style or something like that. You're just kind of seeing 2 characters sit next to each other talking, and it's up to you, the audience member, to find the jokes in what they're saying, and it just really breathes in a nice way. And not a whole lot happens in the movie, and that's fine. Like, I really enjoy just the 2 hours that I get to spend with these people. I wonder if it would wear out its welcome if there was another hour added onto it. Again, it's really hard to say. I don't know.
I mean, is this May's comedy style? Because she had kind of a similar thing, her and Mike Nichols, right? A long-running just stage show where they would be 2 characters and live together or sit together. So I think that transfers well. And I'm done.
Jessica?
This is probably my favorite out of all of the films that I've had to watch for the Young Critics series. And I'm definitely a rom-com kind of lady, so it worked for me. I really loved at the beginning the just like I'm poor montage of Henry just being like, I'm poor, I'm poor.
Driving around his Ferrari.
Like, laughing my butt off during that part. It was so funny.
I want to add to a point, Andrew, that you were making about kind of the style of Elaine May's kind of or how they kind of structure the jokes. One of the things that I was noticing that I was really impressed with, that kind of goes into my overall spiel that I have against most comedies, especially nowadays, that just don't utilize the screen very well. You have this large visual
Visuals at
medium,
all.
and we're just kind of lightly editing improv.
Do you feel like this is more visual than most mainstream comedies?
It is.
Because it's very dialogue based.
It is, but there's also some fantastic just the way she uses perspective. There's one. I have two examples. There's the first example is when he first meets Elaine May's character Henrietta. And Walter Matthau's Henry walks into this room, and the way she frames the scene is you have these people kind of in the front of the frame and to the side of the frame, and in the right hand corner you see Elaine May's character sitting there with this kind of just dorky look on her face, and
I recognized her, seeing her sitting in that corner. I was like, wait, isn't that the director of the movie? But in no way does the camera draw attention to her. You just have to find her.
It's not like this moment where she just cuts the camera over to show this is the person that he's gonna be with. He walks in the room and is interacting with people. They're talking, and she just leaves that where she's just kind of out in the periphery, and she has this hilarious look on her face, and it kind of sets the mood for the entire character. Another scene that I love how she uses the kind of focus of the camera is later when they're on their honeymoon, and Walter Matthau is reading a book on toxicology, to find out how to poison her, and he's right up on the front of the camera. That he almost has a close up, and he's reading this book, and in the background you can kind of see Elaine May, and at first you see her talking because she's looking at this plant, and she's leaning over this cliff to look at the plant, and then the camera pans out, and you get the close up of Walter Matthau, and so while he's reading the book and talking to the audience, she's leaning over the cliff and is like almost falling off and is like jerking back and forth, and so you have him talking but you have this hilarious visual gag with her in the background, and I was really impressed because it was she was able to use all of her elements because she has this hilarious witty dialogue, this banter back and forth, but she's also giving you these wonderfully well developed visual gags, and they're incredibly subtle, but at the same time, most of the jokes in this movie are pretty subtle, and I thought that was just so lively in this. And so it was kind of funny when I saw Pauline Kael's interview or her review when she's talking about this absence of style and this shapeless, limp comic scenes. I was like, no, there's stuff happening, but it's not announcing itself to you. It's just if you catch it, then you're lucky. You get to see it. But there's a lot of stuff happening within the frames within most of the frames of this movie that are really, really funny and kind of add a layer to it.
There was one strange visual moment that stuck out to me, which is when Walter Matthau's character decides he's going to borrow money from his uncle, and right after he has the epiphany to do that, it cuts to his uncle laughing in his face, and the way the shot is framed, it's a perspective shot with the uncle's face very close to the camera and Walter Matthau way in the background, but it's very clearly a composite shot of two different images, and like a green screen behind the uncle's face and Walter Matthau kind of superimposed in the background. And both of them are perfectly in focus, and it's almost creepy, like how well you can see like all the pores on the uncle's face and Walter Matthau so clearly in the background. And I don't know, that's just a strange bit of like cinematic humor. Like if you know how cameras and green screens and stuff work, it's just strange and funny.
Well, what did you guys think of Walter Matthau's character? Because he's such a curmudgeon-y, grumpy old man for really the entire movie. He doesn't really. He improves, but it's funny because he doesn't really improve for probably an hour and a half of this hour and 40-minute movie. You know, for most of the movie, he's still this crotchety old man playing up against this very kind of twee, very adorable Elaine May character. So what did you think of him and kind of the pairing?
I liked him. I related.
I just really, Lydia, you would. Oh my god.
He reminded me of James Mason from Kubrick's Lolita. If anybody has seen that and picked up on that connection. No?
Yeah, except this one's good.
Well, yeah, this is a much better movie than Kubrick's Lolita. I totally agree with that. But just the I don't know, comically, comically stuffy, comically, God, what is the word? Clueless, erudite, sophisticate of that character, and like how he kind of thinks he has the upper hand in every conversation he's in, but he doesn't really. Like especially the conversation he has with his lawyer, or like I don't know, his financial officer at the beginning of the film, where he's trying to explain to him that he has no money. And like that just does not register for him, but he's like always has the utmost decorum when addressing this person.
He made me so mad. Like I felt bad for Henrietta that she had to deal with him. And whenever like he's, plotting to poison her the entire time, and then she names her discovery after him, and I'm thinking like you don't deserve this at all. Like, why did she do that?
He's thinking that as well.
Yeah, and that's when things kind of changed for me, because I started to realize, like, I feel like they need each other. Like, I think that Henry needs Henrietta as much as she needs him. So that's when I started to like his character a little bit more.
You saying that sentence just now, this is me being dumb. You saying that sentence just now made me realize that they both basically have the same name, too. Which I guess makes sense.
That was like the whole marketing thing, because if you watch the trailer for this, which I did for some reason, it's like naming all of these famous couples, and then it's like, and now it's Henry and Henrietta. And I'm like,
okay. He probably likes that her name is really similar to his. It's like, he probably liked that about her.
Every once in a while, you forget that he's plotting to kill her. Especially in the second act of the movie, when it's just like them getting married and visiting the house staff and stuff like that.
It's such a half-baked.
Yeah.
Well, plus you have that amazing gag where she comes into the bedroom and she's wearing that Greek toga or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, nightgown, and she puts her head through the armhole, and I love how they like she allows the entire scene to
how
play.
long that
it's
scene
such
takes.
a long scene, but he plays out Matthau like explaining what she did wrong and having to help her like fix the outfit, and then of course once he fixes the outfit they cut to the next scene, but it's this long like 5-minute sequence where he's going, no Henrietta, your head's through the armhole, no, hold on, let me fix you, all right, just no, don't put your arm there, no, and it's like
where's the head hole at?
And I feel like in today's landscape of twee indie comedies, there's a premium placed on awkwardness as like a commodity in a lead character, especially like a female character. And I feel like a movie like Edge of 17 that came out last year, which I think most of us loved, that character is someone who thinks of themselves as awkward, like in an endearing way. Like, LOL, it's so funny that I'm awkward. But Elaine May's character is truly, like, deeply humanly awkward in this movie. She just does not know how to interact with anyone else in the world.
It's because she is awkward, but the defining quality is more just her helplessness. And I don't. And
Yeah.
I mean, she's a helpless person. She needs, she doesn't know where the head hole is on her Greek nightgown.
So why do we think Elaine May, as this, auteur upon auteur, somebody who writes, directs, and stars in this movie, has chosen to put herself in a role of like complete helplessness and powerlessness?
I think it fits with Henry's character because he doesn't really have a purpose at the beginning of the movie. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to be rich. Like, that was my goal my whole life, just being rich. And that's all I've ever wanted. And when he's not rich anymore, I mean, he's like, what do I do with my life? And he thinks that what he wants to do with his life is to just be rich again. But once he has that, like, his new purpose is to just help Henrietta and to make sure she doesn't have crumbs on her and she doesn't have tags on her clothes. And he just has this new purpose, and he manages her household, manages her estate. And I feel like at the end of the movie, you start to see him just be really happy with himself.
So in a roundabout way, she ends up having a sense of agency because her helplessness has shown someone else the error of their ways.
I don't know, it's actually kind of nice to see a guy have to take on the nurturing role.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's like that's the job of the woman in the relationship. Like having to be, handle things. So I don't know.
No, I like that reading.
It's not that deep of a comment.
I also think just I'm sure there's those qualities as well, but I think on the base level, it's just the character's really funny. So I don't think she doesn't have a problem because she's really funny. The Henrietta character kind of has this like Rowan Atkinson quality where she's just bumbling through and dropping stuff and she always has this proper demeanor to her, but she's dropping. She keeps, like, when you first meet her, she keeps dropping tea onto this carpet, and there's this constant fumbling about of her that it's less that she's ignorant or stupid, and it's just more that she's clumsy and she trips up on herself. And so I don't, even though you can describe her as helpless, I don't think that that's a submissive or demeaning quality. I think that she's just the person that just trips over herself and falls down and drops stuff, and that's just kind of who she is. And so I think at its core, she's like, this is just a really funny character, and plus she has the scene whenever she's actually talking, she has like these scenes where she's talking about these very dense botanical terms. And there's something really funny about that where she's just going on these long pontificated, well, not really pontificated, but she just goes on these long, She doesn't register that no one else is following what she's talking about. She has no register. And so that's really funny as well, where she's going on these long bouts of dialogue. I don't know. I think that it's also, she's just a really funny character. So of course you want to play her.
And I think that it's also telling that we never, for the first maybe 80% of the movie, we never really see her in her natural habitat. She spends her quality time at school doing research or out in the wilderness exploring. And the table finally gets turned in the final scenes of the film where she goes on that canoeing trip with Walter Matthau. And all of a sudden he is the helpless one, and he's always playing this false facade of I know what I'm doing, I have researched this for many years, etc. But once he's in a canoe and has to paddle against the rapids, he has no idea what he is doing, and you sense this feeling of confidence and expertise from Elaine May's character that you don't get anywhere else in the film. And I kind of like that, how they flip the idea of agency or knowledge or intellect on its head and let you think about how there's different fields of knowledge and different ways to be intelligent. And just because you've seen somebody in one context doesn't mean you really understand them as a full person.
Anybody have any Any other thoughts on A New Leaf? I want to also add that a thing that made me laugh really hard was when the two were getting married, and her lawyer is walking her down the aisle and whispering into her ear, "I will kill myself if you go through with this. This will." And just completely ruining the mood of this supposed to be incredibly romantic sequence, as well as Walter Matthau yelling at the young girl.
The girl who like goes to the bathroom and flushes the toilet loudly right before Elaine May walks down the aisle.
It was such a funny sequence. It was just I guess my final thoughts would be that this is a really funny movie. I really enjoyed this. I don't really know why more people haven't seen it. I'm kind of questioning people on this at this point. Like, this is a really funny, very charming movie. I think even if you miss a lot of the humor in it, because maybe it just kind of, you know, seems too subtle to really like register with you, I think that there's still something between just the kind of give and take of Walter Matthau's character and Elaine May's character that's really charming. But I think really that this is a incredibly funny movie. I was really impressed by it.
This is probably something we should have done our research on beforehand, but I'm wondering, like, for any listeners who were going to theaters in the 70s when this came out, did this get a wide release? Was this a widely marketed movie? Is this not widely seen just because people don't know about it? What's the deal?
It did get a release. It was poor at the box office. It's just, you know, people just really just kind of missed it. It was one of those that it kind of...
It does feel like Elaine May's career and a lot of her movies are just buried in a weird way. I mean, I said in my Letterboxd review that it would have been awesome if she had Woody Allen's career. I just don't understand why this did not take off in the way that, you know, Manhattan and Annie Hall and things like that in the 70s did.
I mean, I think that again, it's unfortunate, but it kind of goes back to that financial thing. She's directing movies that are going way over budget, and so I'm sure that's having a strain on just studios to like really invest in Elaine May movies. Lydia?
Yeah, and I also wonder if people were unfavorably comparing her to her former partner, Mike Nicholson. Like,
yeah,
he took off with The Graduate and
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
So, and like, he was really good about budgets and stuff, so I'm sure studios were like, oh, we'll get his partner and it'll be the same thing and tap into the youth culture.
So was she with Mike Nichols before she started making Hollywood pictures?
They were Nichols and May. They had they did comedy shows. Well, and also just kind of compared to like Woody Allen. Woody Allen is a very efficient director who cranks out his movie once a year, doesn't really go over budget, kind of hits his marks and moves on. So of course you're gonna allow him to make movie after movie because he's, you know, it's almost like a workman's mentality. While this one, it seemed like judging from the notes on the, you know, production, you know, it was going over time and over budget, and she was getting angry at the cuts, and it seemed a lot of stuff behind the scenes, which is, you know, unfortunate. But also you have like something like Ishtar, which is, you know, she made this big movie with Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman, and it just completely just flopped at the box office, and that's kind of been the last thing that she's done really directing wise. I know that she directed a thing on Mike Nichols for HBO a couple years ago, but really Ishtar kind of just, it seemed to cut her off from the rest of Hollywood.
I don't know, it seems like that's a huge shame. Like, we let men directors, they get flops all the time, and
it is.
She had one, and like, I don't know.
Yep. Million second chances.
Yeah.
She's still alive. Let her make a movie. I want to see Elaine May's movie at 85.
You can go on HBO and watch her documentary on Mike Nichols, because she died. I just said, guys, she made a movie.
But like a funny movie. But like, I want, make me laugh.
Yeah, I want a funny movie, please.
All right. Any less demanding thoughts about before we wrap up this episode? Jessica, did you have anything to end on?
I think that our listeners should get some wine and some club soda and a little bit of lime juice and sit down and watch A New Leaf because it's great.
What the heck happens with Walter Matthau every time he drinks that concoction and just almost hurls?
I think it's the shitty wine.
The best
it's
part is
gonna
when
be-
she's describing it to him and she's like, it tastes like grape juice. And he's like, well, why don't you just drink grape juice? She goes, no.
It's too sugary, that's why.
It's not sweet enough.
All right.
It's not as sweet.
It's a
It needs to just curdle everything in my stomach.
All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter at @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all of the movies that we talked about in this episode. Real quickly before we wrap up as well, we want to give a shout out. You posted this in July, so we apologize if you're listening to this and going, why the hell did these people not respond to my message on iTunes? We really apologize. I never go on iTunes. I probably should. You guys should review us and like us on iTunes. That's really helpful. Anyway, this comment came from LKM25, and the subject is 1979 Stone. I don't know what that means, but again, thank you for the comment and like.
That doesn't mean anything, I don't think.
Thank you for the 5 stars and the review of happy listening to young voices appreciate and dissect older films. We appreciate your comment and like LKM25. Again, we encourage more people to do that because we'll be really good about reading them off on if more people do that. So go to iTunes, find
at least 1 month down the road.
It's we're not that far off. But yeah, we're gonna be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series next week with 1971's A Touch of Zen. So we're reaching the end of the series, which is a bummer. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, if you would like to read Nathan Smith's review of Spider-Man Homecoming, that is currently on the site. We should hopefully be getting a review of A Ghost Story from Jessica because I'm gonna put her on blast right now, and hopefully we can see that.
And go watch Zach's video essay if you haven't yet.
Yeah, go watch my video essay and complain about me calling it a song like a asshole. All right, so thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week.